Shabbos. I don't want to take the time to belabor the introduction, mostly because I'm afraid of the Rav and he wouldn't like it, and from what I understand. But I do want to take a moment to offer a Karas Tov to Rabbi Bogopolsky for all of his help, not only in arranging the Shabbos, but in sharing the Torah of the Rav with us. I'm one of the major consumers on a regular basis of the Rav's Divrei Torah, which if you're not on the email list and you're not invited to the Zoom, with the weekly opportunity to learn, I'm sure after the Shabbos you'll be eager to do so. So we're very grateful to the Dr. Yitzchak Belzan Beis Medrash of BRS for arranging the Shabbos, and to all the many sponsors who put it together. I had the privilege to hear the Rav and to daven by him several times. And my kids were living in Yerushalayim, Ramat Eshkol, and daven in the shul, and became a chassid instantly. It's hard not to. And you hear the width and breadth of learning and the charisma of the teaching of Torah, the insight and the inspiration, which became making this Shabbos a no-brainer from that moment, that first introduction, trying to figure out a way. It wasn't until Bugsy moved here that we found the way, but to find a way. Each time I would go, I'd say to Rav, we have to have the Imboka. I'd say, yeah, whatever, basically. maybe one day. So Baruch Hashem, Rabbi Bogopolsky, we've been able to make it happen. We're very excited. I hope you'll take advantage over the course of the whole Shabbos. Tonight at our home we're having a Tish and Onag, and over the course of Shabbos and Motzei Shabbos and Sunday, many learning opportunities. I want to thank this morning Howard and Nancy Pitch for sponsoring our Erev Shabbos Kollel. Mary Howard's mom. Our learning should be the Nishmas Tzipora Bas Gedalia. With any further ado, for one Tashlita.
Okay, thank you for those kind words. And listen, this week's parsha, the first of this week's parsha is Parshas Behar, and the pasuk says, "Vayedaber Hashem el Moshe Behar Sinai Lemor." And the Torah goes on to give the mitzvah of Shemitah. But Rashi wants to know why there's an emphasis on the fact that this Dibur was Behar Sinai. And Rashi says, Ma inyan Shemitah Eitzel Har Sinai. Why is Har Sinai mentioned in the context of the mitzvah of Shemitah? And Rashi says, V'aloi kol ha-mitzvahs Nemru mi Sinai, weren't all mitzvahs given at Sinai, and the Torah doesn't spell it out. So Rashi says, Elama Shmita Nemru kloloi seho ufrotoi seho v'diktu keho mi Sinai, that just like Shemitah, not only were the general rules given in Sinai, but also the details, and also diktu keho. Rabbi, how would you take the fine points? Yeah, the diktu keho were given in Sinai. So af kulon, all mitzvahs, we learn from this mitzvah that all the mitzvahs were given, not only the general rules were given in Sinai, but also proteha v'dikdu keha. Kach shnuya b'Torah's Kohanim. So it says in the Torah's Kohanim, which is, the Midrash Tanoim on Chumash Vayikra. But Rashi, after he quotes it, he says, "V'nira li shekach pirusha," requires an explanation, and Rashi offers an explanation. And soon you'll see why this requires an explanation. Rashi says, "Lefi shaloi matzinu shmitas karkois shenishnes ba'arvois moyov b'mishneh Torah." Many mitzvahs were repeated in Arvois Moyov before they entered Eretz Yisrael in Chumash Devarim. They are repeated, but mitzvah Shemitah is not repeated in Arvois Moyov b'mishneh Torah, and therefore lamadnu shekloloiseha ufrotoiseha kulon nemru misinai. In other words, if it would be mentioned once again in Chumash Devarim by Arvois Moyov, so we would say that maybe that's when the details were given. But since this mitzvah is not mentioned once again in Chumash Devarim and Arvois Moyov, so it must be that it was all given in Sinai. No. Bo hakosu v'limet kan al kol dibur v'dibur shenidber l'Moshe, even those that are repeated in Chumash Dvarim in Arvois Moyov, we learn from here that everything was given in Sinai. That's Rashi's explanation. In other words, why does it require an explanation? Because it only says over here Behar Sinai. So how do we know for all mitzvahs? The Torah says that, and how do we know that this mitzvah was given in all its details in Sinai? It says because this mitzvah wasn't repeated, we know it was given in all its details in Sinai, and from here we learn to everywhere. But the Ramban says, he asks a few questions on this. He says, really, is that true? Because it wasn't repeated in Arvois Moyov, we know that it was given in all its details in Sinai. So that will hold true about many other mitzvahs that are not repeated in Chumash Devarim. Why Dafke, the mitzvah of Shemitah? There are other mitzvahs. And second of all, he says, we should say, Adarabah, those mitzvahs that were not repeated, those were said in all their details in Sinai. Whereas those mitzvahs that were repeated were not given in all its details in Sinai. What gives us the right to learn from this mitzvah, since we know that it was given in its entirety in Sinai? We learn from here to all mitzvahs. Let's say Farkeret. Yeah, we should say the opposite. The mitzvahs that are not repeated in Arvei Smoyov, those are the mitzvahs that were given in their entirety in Sinai. The other mitzvahs were not. Anyway, the Ramban has a different shot. He has another question on Rashi, but the Cheskuni explains the Rashi, and he says that the Cheskuni is a Rishon that is really a Pirush on Rashi from one of the Rishonim. The Cheskuni says that the Pshat in Rashi is that since Shemitah is not repeated in Arvei Smoyov, we would know that it was given entirely in Sinai. And therefore, it didn't need to say Vayidaber Hashem al Moshe Behar Sinai, because we would have known that. Because we would have known that it was all given in Sinai, because it doesn't appear in Arvei Smoyov. So we say that the Torah wrote Behar Sinai by the mitzvah of Shemitah, in spite of the fact that I would have known without the Torah telling us that it was given in its entirety in Sinai. So it's written here to teach us to all other mitzvahs that they were given entirely in Sinai. That's what the Cheskuni says. Okay, but you know that really this is a machlokes tanoim in several places in Shas. If Kol HaTorah nitnu kloloiseho proteseho v'dikdukeho misinai, if Torah was given, not only the general rule, but also the details were given already in Sinai, or not. And this appears, L'mashal, the first time in Chagiga Davov, where Rabbi Akiva says, Klolois uprotois nemru b'Sinai. V'nishnu b'oil moed. They were repeated in the oil moed during the 40 years. V'nishtalshu b'arvei smoyov. They were said for the third time before they entered Eretz Yisrael and arvei smoyov and Chumash Devarim. Rabbi Shmuel Omer, no, Klolois nemru b'Sinai. Only the general rules were given in Sinai. Am I boring you or not? No? Okay, good. So, but if at any point that happens, please give me those facial expressions. I should be able to, read your lips. Okay, but Rabbi Shmuel Omer, Klolois b'Sinai. Only the Klolois were given in Sinai. Pratis b'oil moed. The details were given in the oil moed. So the Chayra, this Torah's Koyanim is following the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. Yeah. When I say, if he says the Gemara Zokt in Sanhedrin Daf Peivav, that Stam Safro follows Rabbi Yehuda, v'kulu alim Rabbi Akiva, that all the brises follow the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. And so says the Rashmi Shans, which is a commentary on the Torah's Koyanim, from one of the Rishonim. He says that this Torah's Koyanim is following the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, who says, Klolois uprotois nemru b'Sinai. However, Rashi in the beginning of Parshas Mishpatim says, Ve'ela Mishpatim asher tosim lefneim Vav moisev alin yerishim. Why does the Parshas Mishpatim begin with a Vav? Eila Mishpatim would be a normal way to begin a sentence. Ve'ela Mishpatim zok Rashi Ve'ela Mishpatim Vav moisev alin yerishim, and it's coming to teach us ma horishonim misinai, just like the above mentioned were given in Sinai. Af elu, also these the Mishpatim were given in Sinai. Now, if we say that all the mitzvahs were given entirely in Sinai, so what's the statement over here that Af elu nemru mi Sinai, that the mishpatim were given in Sinai? Everything was given in Sinai. So, l'chore, this drasha that comes from the Mechilta in Parshas Mishpatim is following the opinion of Rabbi Shmuel, who says that in all mitzvahs only the general rules were given in Sinai, and that's the special Chiddush over here. Ve'ela Mishpatim, that just like the Aseres HaDibros we know were given in Sinai, the above mentioned in Parshas Yisro, it's also Ve'ela Mishpatim, that the Mishpatim were given in Sinai also with their details and fine points. And the Mechilta, by the way, is the full name of the Mechilta is Mechilta de Rabbi Yishmael. And actually, this statement in the Mechilta, if you open up the Mechilta, you see that it's Rabbi Shmuel that makes this drasha. Rabbi Shmuel Omer, ve'ela mishpatim asher tosim lefneim, ma rishonim mi Sinai, afelu mi Sinai. So he's following his own opinion that other mitzvahs were not mi Sinai, as far as the details are concerned. Well, if he's there, Rashi is contradicting himself, because in Parshas Behar, in our Parsha, he says that Kol HaMitzvahs Kulon, we learn from here to everywhere, that Kol HaMitzvahs, Nemru Kol Esenim Pradesem Dikukei Sinai. Whereas Rashi in Parshas Mishpatim makes a particular drasha, Lagabe the Mishpatim, that they were said in Sinai. Vov Moisiv Alin Yerishin, that just like the Aseres HaDibros was said in Sinai. You hear the question? Oh. So, the Orach Chaim HaKodesh in Parshas Mishpatim already points this out, that there's a stira, there's a contradiction between these two Rashis. It would seem that Rashi holds that this drasha that Rabbi Shmuel darshan, ma ve'ela, ma harishonim misinai afelu misinai, is a drasha that's being made not only according to his own opinion that other mitzvahs were not given in their entirety in Sinai, but even according to Rabbi Akiva, that we follow his opinion in Parshas Behar. There's still room to make this drasha about the Mishpatim. How's that? I want to say very simple, because you know that on the pasuk in Parshas B'Shalach, where it says Sham Sam Loy Choik u'Mishpat, the Sham Nisahu, it says that in Mora we were taught certain mitzvahs, and the Gemara says in Sanhedrin that dinim Choik u'Mishpat, we were taught the dinim, we were given the dinim already in Mora. So maybe we would think that the Mishpatim were not given in Sinai at all. They were already given before in Mara, and they were not repeated in Sinai. So maybe that's the function of the drasha. Ve'ela hamishpatim asher tosim lefnei ma harishonim mi Sinai afelu mi Sinai. It's coming to teach us not that the details and the fine points were given in Sinai. It's coming to teach us bechlal that the Mishpatim were given in Sinai, because without this drasha, we would say that it wasn't given in Sinai at all, because it was already given in Mara. Therefore, this drasha of Rabbi Shmuel is not dafka according to his own opinion. It has nothing to do, Rashi held, with the machlokes of Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva, legabe the details and the fine points. This drasha has nothing to do with that machlokes. This is a separate drasha. That's why Rashi brings this drasha, even though he follows the opinion of Rabbi Akiva in Parshas Behar. Behemoth, it seems Mefurish in the Mechilta de Rashbi. This is another Mechilta de Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Yeah, you're not like the Zohar that's a lot of controversy. If it's yes to be attributed or not to be attributed to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and to what extent. But there's a Mechilta de Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, which is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And he says, over there it says, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, HaMishpatim nitnu liYisrael b'Mora. Koydem matan Torah, shelem Hashem sam loy choik u'mishpat. Yochol loy nishnu b'Sinai. You would think that they were given in Mora. Once is enough. They don't have to be repeated. Talmud loyma ve'ela mishpatim. Rabbi Shmuel loyma. Kol makom shelem eila chutz min harishonim. It's a cutoff point. V'chol makom shelem ve'ela moisef al harishonim. Kan shelem ve'ela moisef al hadibros el yoinim. Ma hadibros el yoinim mi Sinai. Af hamishpatim mi Sinai. V'chein u'oim ezichru Torah Moshe Avdi asher tzivisi oisoi b'chorev chukim u'mishpatim. So it's a Mefurish pasuk in Malachi that chukim u'mishpatim were given in Sinai. V'oimer v'al har Sinai, pasuk in Nehemiah, v'al har Sinai yoradta v'dibarta imohem mishamayim v'atitem lehem mishpatim yishor. So you see clearly that the topic that's being discussed over here is whether or not they were said in Sinai, because maybe they were already said in Mora and they were not repeated. So it has nothing to do with this discussion. And if you look over the Vaita in the Mechilta, actually, in the after we bring Rabbi Shmuel in the Mechilta de Rashbi, it says Rabbi Akiva omer ma harishonim ba'ato hareisa lodas. Af eila ba'ato hareisa lodas. This is not clear what Rabbi Akiva is coming to say, but he says that the eila hamishpatim, that's comparing the mishpatim to the Aseres HaDibros that were above mentioned in Parashas Yisro, is not coming to teach us that af elu misinai, but it's coming to teach us that just like the Aseres HaDibros were revealed to us on the level of Ato Horeso Lodas, so also the Mishpatim were revealed to us on the level of Ato Harei Soladas. Anyway, we don't know exactly what that means, but you see that Rabbi Akiva actually didn't make the drasha that Rabbi Shmuel made. He made a different drasha. So if we wouldn't know from the Mechil to the Rashbi that the discussion over here is if it was repeated or not, if it was repeated or not repeated after Mora, we would say that the reason that Rabbi Akiva comes up with a different drasha is because he's following his own opinion that all mitzvahs were given in Sinai, Kollel, Protei, but now that we know from the Mechil to the Rashbi that that's not the discussion, you have to say that Rabbi Akiva is making a different drasha, but it has nothing to do with his shita. Okay, so bottom line, Unters the Shura, yeah. The thing is that we're saying Shura Tachtona. Okay, so what are we saying? We're saying that Rashi really is following the opinion that all mitzvahs were given Kloloi saying, Uprotei saying, V'dikdukei misina. Like Rabbi Akiva, and that's the Rashi in our Parsha. Rashi in Parsha Mishpatim that brings the drosha Ve'ele HaMishpatim Vov Moisiv Alin Rishon Ma Rishoyim Misina Ve'ele Misina. That's because that drosha is could be made according to everyone. It's coming to tell us that it wasn't just said in Mora, it was repeated in Sinai. But it still doesn't solve the problem, because we have a Rashi in Shir HaShirim on the pasuk Heviani El Beis Hayayin B'digloi Olai Ahava. Yeah, so Rashi says, what's the Beis Hayayin? What's the Beis Hayayin that the Rebbeinu Shalom brought us to? Oil Moed Shesham Nitnu Proteha Ubiureha Shel Torah. So over here, Rashi is clearly embracing the opinion of Rabbi Shmuel that only the general rule was said in Sinai, whereas the details were not said in Sinai, Ba'il Moed. So that is a yes, a stira with Rashi in our Parsha that says that Behar Sinai, just like Shemitah, so also all other mitzvahs, Kollel saying, Protei saying, Sinai, so we still have a stira. Okay, so what could we possibly say in the short few minutes that we have? We can say like this. You know, in the end of Parshas Emor, the pasuk says, "Vayanichuhu b'mishmor." This is talking about the Megadev. Vayanichuhu b'mishmor. Lifrosh lahem al pi Hashem, that the Rebbeinu Shalom should tell them what to do with him. They put him in jail. You know, in Judaism there is no jail. This was like a temporary holding place, but we don't. It seems like we feel that lashes are more humane than cutting off a person from society, because like the Rambam says, ha'adam hu medini, a person is a person. A person is only a person if he's connected with other people. I mean, to lock somebody up is something we don't do. But this was a temporary lockup to find out what's his thing. Okay, they had now two people they didn't know what to do with, the Mekoshish and the Megadif. So they put the Megadif on his own. They were both at the same time. But they did know. So they knew that the Mekoshish ate in the Yom HaShabbos, his din is Misa. They didn't know which Misa. That was what they were in doubt about. So there was a different level of doubt that they had with regards to the Mekoshish and with regards to the Megadif. But what do you mean they didn't know? If Kol HaTorah is Kollel, Protei, V'dikdukei Misinai, how did they not know? How did they not know? So the same thing is in the Parsha Pesach Sheni. It says, Imdu v'eshma, ma yidaber Hashem lochem. If Kollel is Protei, V'dikdukei Misinai, how did Moshe Rabbeinu not know? So the Chazon Ish has a whole simon about this topic. It's called, in the end of Arachim, Simon Kuf Chafei, it's called Seder Nesinas HaTorah, where he's Mechadish that even if you say Klolos uprotos v'dikdukim never misinai, it just means it was said to Moshe, but it wasn't yet said to him to give over to the Jews, and he gave it over to the Jews during the 40 years in the Midbar, and he says, interesting enough, that at that point these were not halachas that could be carried out yet. These were just halachas that Moshe Rabbeinu knew. They didn't become part of the system part of the legal system of Klal Yisrael yet. And therefore, he didn't know. He didn't know what to do with the Mekaysh and the Megadif, because true, he knew, but he didn't know if it's practical already or it's not practical already, because kicking this into the practical mahalach of Mishpat was something that only happened later. It's a very interesting shmuz. This is what he says. So the Mela, he says that's the pshat. Kollel is the president of the Dukan Member Sinai, but it wasn't said to him to tell Klal Yisrael. It wasn't said to him to tell. It's besides for the fact that it's a very creative and interesting idea, which actually appears also in the Megillas Esther. Not that we read on Purim, but there's a commentary on the Sefer HaMitzvos LaHarambam, Megillas Esther. His mother's name was Esther, and he named his Sefer after his mother, like the Tzlach, the Tzlach, Seal Nefesh Chaya was his mother's name. The Chavez Yor, his mother's name was Chava, and he named his Sefer Chavez Yor. He was Chavez Yor. In any case, in the Megillas Esther, in Mitzvahs Loisas Kuf Tzadik Dalet, he also says the same thing. But Lamaisa, we're learning it from where? From the pasuk Vayidaber Hashem al Moshe, Behar Sinai, Lemor. So it says here, Lemor. Lemor l'chayr means to say it to the Jews. How can we say that this drasha only teaches us that it was said to him? If it says Lemor. That means there's a Ramban in Parshas Va'era that says that not every Lemor means to say to the Jews. How do they teach like in school, Lemor? They saying. So you see, because in Yiddish, in Cheder, they said Azoy zu zug. So Azoy zu zugen could really have a dual meaning. It can mean Azoy zu zugen means say so to the others, or means saying so. Anyway, there's a Ramban in Parshas Va'era that says that Lemor does not only doesn't have to mean it doesn't have to mean to say to others. Or we can say that, listen, according to the Keskuni, it's really the how do we learn from here to all mitzvahs? Because the Torah didn't have to tell me that this was said in Sinai, because I could have figured it out on my own, and therefore we say that the function of this pasuk, the function of the pasuk saying Behar Sinai, is to teach me that all of Torah was given close to him. So it could be that the Lemor is really part of the message of the Ikar pasuk, which is the mitzvah of Shemitah. Vayidaber Hashem al Moshe Behar Sinai Lemor. The drasha of Behar Sinai, which is coming to teach me of Kollel Torah Kula, doesn't connect with a Lemor. Anyway, listen, this is what he says. L'fi zeh, you understand that it's bechlal not shver, because the ve'ela hamishpatim hashtasim l'fneim that we say Mari Shonim Misinai Afela Misinai is that Moshe Rabbeinu should already, at that point, it becomes the law of the land. It becomes the law that's given over to Klal Yisrael. When Rashi says in Parshas, so that was something that was particular to the Mishpatim, whereas what we're saying over here, Behar Sinai, just means that it was said to Moshe. It doesn't mean that Moshe said it over to the Jews. And so, also, when Rashi says in Shir Hashirim, Beis Hayayin Sheshom Nitnu, Proteho V'Digdukel Shel Torah, that means when it was nitten to Klal Yisrael. Nitten to Moshe Rabbeinu, it was already nitten in Sinai. But it wasn't given over to the Yidden until later. As I come and zog, in any case, the Orach Chaim makes a comment. It says, Ma inyan Shemitah Eitzel Har Sinai, that we learn from Shemitah to all other mitzvahs. But he says, nevertheless, Rashi, there are several other mitzvahs that are not repeated in Arvoi Smoyov, and therefore we know that they were given in their entirety in Sinai. And the Torah could have chosen any of those mitzvahs to be the Malamed, to be the source from which we should learn that all other mitzvahs were given entirely in Sinai. So there still must be a reason that the Torah chose the mitzvah of Shemitah to teach us for all other mitzvahs. He says there must be, after everything, a special connection between Shemitah and Sinai. Otherwise, the Torah could have chosen other mitzvahs to teach us that Kol HaTorah Kula is Nema Misinai. So we can suggest like this, by the Chet Eitz Hadas, there's a Gzeira, Arura ha'adoma ba'avurecha, v'koitz v'dar dar tatzmiach loch, b'zeh asapecha toich alechem. Yes, so we were cursed that we're going to have to work hard to make a living. Okay, l'chara, that's why when Jews are told about the mitzvah of Shemitah, they say v'chisoimru ma noichal v'ashana hashvius hein loy nizro v'loy ne'esoif es tfuaseinu. In other words, they're asking, how is this possible? We know that that one has to sweat in order to put bread on the table. So how is it possible that hein loy nizra v'loy nesav is tfuaseinu? How can it be b'tzivisi as berchosi? So it could be that the root of this is because the Gemara says in Sech Shabbos, Daf Kuf Mem Vav, that Yisrael she'omdu al Har Sinai, Paskazu Hamosa, that there was the world became defiled at the time of the Chet Eitz Hadas, and the world became contaminated. There was Zuhama that was Yored La'olam, and at the time of Yisrael she'omdu al Har Sinai, that Zuhama was removed. No, if the Zuhama was removed, so then it sounds like the sin was corrected. The sin was corrected. We should go back to the original state of being, where there was no curse of Bezeh Asapecha Toich Alechem. You must wonder what we would be doing. What would we be doing if we wouldn't be cursed? I mean, we'd go bored. But in the stomach, we wouldn't be cursed. We would enjoy learning. So the thing is like this. The thing is that so if it was removed, so why are we still working for a living if it was removed? But there's a Zohar that says that with the Chet HaEgel they brought back partially that Zuhama with the Chet HaEgel. No, but it says partially they brought it back, but not entirely. So where is the expression in the real world for the fact that we removed that Zuhama partially? Maybe that expresses itself in the Shana HaShvius. In other words, that Shana HaShvius is a time when we could in this world experience a connection with a level that Yidden had at Sinai. And therefore it's Inyan Shemitah Eitzel Har Sinai, because Shemitah is really somehow bringing us back during this time to the Madrega of Sinai. It's interesting that the Rambam has Hilchas Shemitah v'Yovel. Yeah, but in the last two prakim of Hilchas Shemitah v'Yovel, he's not talking not about Shemitah, not about Yovel. He's talking about the fact that Leviim don't take a chelik in Eretz Yisrael and they don't take a chelik in the Biza of Milchama. What does that have to do with Shemitah and Yovel? But it could be that the root of this, that the Leviim don't have a Nachla Ba'aretz and they live off Matnois Leviah, is because Shevet Levi, didn't sin by the Egel. So they're somehow more shayach, they're more connected to that Madrega of Paska Zuhamason, of Matan Torah. So they are shayach to the Inyan of Shemitah v'Yovel. Shemitah v'Yovel. Anyway, having said that, I wish you all a good Shabbos. Yes.